Love ends in paperwork, not in shouting or weeping or the slam of a door, but in the quiet click of a PDF opening on a Tuesday evening in March, the kitchen still warm from dinner, the dishwasher humming its familiar third cycle song. I had filed the annual reports for Caldwell Associates for 11 years. I knew every form, every deadline, every checkbox. I could recite our business structure in my sleep. Director Michael Caldwell, Secretary Elena Caldwell, registered address 4782 Maple Ridge Drive. That night, the document loaded differently. Director Michael Caldwell, Secretary Michael Caldwell, registered agent Stephanie Chen, spouse of Director Stephanie Chen. The cursor blinked. The refrigerator clicked off. Somewhere upstairs, Michael was brushing his teeth. I could hear the water running, the familiar pattern of 30 seconds per quadrant, the dentist's recommendation he'd followed religiously since 2019. The house smelled like the garlic chicken I'd made, his favorite, with extra lemon the way he liked it. I read the line again. Spouse of Director Stephanie Chen. My name is Elena. My name has been Elena for 43 years, Elena Caldwell for 17 of them. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one small truth at a time. We met at a conference in Portland, the kind where everyone wears lanyards and pretends the hotel coffee is acceptable. Michael had been 2 years into building his consulting firm, working 18-hour days, living on ambition and microwave dinners. I was working in corporate compliance, bored enough to attend a breakout session on regulatory frameworks just to escape the main hall. He sat next to me, asked to borrow a pen, returned it with his number written on my program. Too forward? He'd asked. Probably, I'd said. Call me anyway. The first year, we were careful with each other. Dinners that ended at reasonable hours, goodnight kisses that didn't presume morning, the slow negotiation of two people learning to stop protecting themselves. He told me about his father, who'd worked for the same insurance company for 34 years and died 6 months into retirement. I'm not doing that, Michael said. I'm building something that matters. By year 2, I was doing his bookkeeping on weekends. By year 3, I'd quit my corporate job to work with him full-time. No salary at first, just the understanding that we were building something together, that my name would eventually appear on the door beside his, that we meant something solid and permanent. We married on a Thursday in November. City Hall, 2 witnesses borrowed from the street, lunch afterward at the Thai place near his apartment. Our apartment, he'd corrected, sliding the key across the table. I'd kept my own place for another month, just in case. But I never went back. The business grew, we hired staff, moved into a real office with a reception desk and a conference room that smelled like new carpet. I managed operations, handled compliance, filed the quarterly reports and annual statements. Michael met with clients, closed deals, spoke at conferences. We fell into rhythm, him out front, me behind the scenes, both essential, both building. At home, we were gentler versions of our professional selves. He cooked on Sundays. I handled the bills. We fell asleep to nature documentaries, his hand always finding mine somewhere around the second commercial break. We talked about children in abstract terms, someday, and when things slow down, and maybe next year. Next year became a quiet understanding that maybe we were enough. By the 10th year, I could finish his sentences. He knew I'd want tea, not coffee, after 8 p.m. We'd become the couple other people envied, the ones who still laughed at dinner parties, who could work together without killing each other, who seemed to have figured out the secret algorithm of partnership. I didn't know then that this would be the last night I slept well. The fracture began small. 3 months before I saw the report, Michael started working late on Thursdays. Client in California, he'd explain, texting around 7. Time zone thing, don't wait up. I didn't question it. We'd always given each other space, trusted each other implicitly in the way people do when they've built something together. When leaving would mean dismantling not just a marriage, but a shared enterprise, a daily architecture of mutual dependence. But small things shifted. He stopped reaching for my hand during documentary credits, started keeping his phone face down on the counter, changed his passcode, casually, as if it were a software update, nothing personal. Security protocols, he'd said when I noticed. That new ransomware thing. The first Thursday, he missed dinner entirely. I ate alone at the kitchen island, the second plate growing cold across from me. I covered it with foil, labeled it with the date, as if that made it less pathetic. He came home at 11, smelling like restaurant air, that particular blend of other people's food and recycled ventilation. "Sorry," he'd said, kissing the top of my head. "Lost track of time." I wanted to ask, with whom? But I'd spent 17 years building trust like a foundation, concrete poured and set and load-bearing. You don't chip at your own foundation just because the walls feel cold. Instead, I said, "There's chicken in the fridge." "Already ate," he said. "But thank you." He'd stopped saying thank you, love. Just thank you. Language erodes before love does. You notice it the way you notice a favorite sweater pilling. Not all at once, but in moments of unexpected texture, the softness gone rough under your fingertips. By February, the Thursdays had expanded to include Tuesday afternoons. "Meeting the new contractor," he'd say. "Going over the proposal." He'd come home energized in a way I hadn't seen in years. Talking fast, laughing easily, that particular brightness people get when they're falling into something new. I told myself it was just work. Michael had always been energized by new projects, new challenges. This was good. This was him being passionate about the business again. But the bathroom started smelling different, a floral note that wasn't mine. When I asked about it, casual as pouring coffee, he said, "Oh, the office manager switched cleaning supplies. Something eco-friendly." Our office manager was 67 and had used the same pine-scented cleaner for 8 years. I didn't say anything. Instead, I started noticing. The receipts multiplied. Coffee shops I'd never heard of. Restaurants in neighborhoods we never visited. Always 2 items. Always paid in cash. But the ATM withdrawals were there in our shared account, regular as clockwork, every Thursday afternoon. $200, then $400, then $6. I could have asked, should have asked. But there's a strange paralysis that comes with almost knowing. If you don't ask, the answer can't break you. If you don't look directly at the thing, it might dissolve in peripheral vision, might turn out to be nothing after all. So I filed the quarterly reports, reconciled the accounts, kept the office running, pretended that love was the same as routine, that repetition equaled permanence. The annual report was due March 15th. I'd been preparing it since February, gathering documents, updating information. It was mechanical by now, a task I could complete while listening to podcasts, while thinking about grocery lists, while actively not thinking about the distance growing between us like frost spreading across a windshield. I uploaded the filing that Tuesday evening, paid the state fee, downloaded the confirmation receipt. That's when I saw it. The state had updated our information based on the filing from the registered agent, a service Michael had mentioned, switching to 3 months prior. "Take some of the administrative burden off you," he'd said. "You do too much." The registered agent had filed an amendment in January. While I was at my mother's bedside in Ohio, while she was dying slowly in a hospade with fluorescent lights and beige walls, while I was learning what grief tastes like when you're trying not to cry in hospital cafeterias, Michael had filed paperwork. Spouse of director, Stephanie Chen. Stephanie, I'd heard the name. "New project coordinator," he'd said. "Really sharp. You'd like her." I sat very still. The kitchen light buzzed slightly, the way it had for weeks. I'd meant to change it, kept forgetting. Now the sound seemed enormous, a physical presence in the room. Upstairs, the water shut off. I closed the laptop. There's a particular kind of knowing that settles into your bones before it reaches your brain. Your body understands first, the way your hands shake when you pour coffee the next morning, the way your heart stumbles when you hear his footsteps on the stairs, the way your throat closes when he kisses your forehead and says, "Morning, love, love." The word was back, but it sounded wrong now, like a recording played at the wrong speed. I didn't confront him that morning, or that afternoon, or that week. Instead, I started reading our history differently, began seeing it as an archivist would, evidence of what really happened beneath what I'd believed was happening. That weekend trip to Seattle in December. "Conference," he'd said. I checked the conference website later, casually. It had been canceled due to COVID concerns, rescheduled to April, the new cologne he'd started wearing in November. "You like it?" he'd asked. I'd said yes, because I'd wanted to like it, wanted to be the kind of wife who noticed and approved. But I'd never bought it for him. Someone else had. The way he'd started going to the gym at 6 a.m. instead of 6 p.m. "Better for my schedule," he'd explained. But it meant he showered at the gym now, came home already clean. already dressed, no evidence on his skin of where he'd been. I thought about Stephanie Chen, Googled her one night while Michael slept beside me, his breathing steady and unconcerned. Her LinkedIn profile showed a woman in her early 30s, sharp-featured and smiling in that professional way that suggests competence without warmth. Master's degree in business administration. Previously worked at firms I'd never heard of. Started at Caldwell Associates in November, the same month he'd started working late on Thursdays. I scrolled through her posts, professional updates, industry articles, nothing personal. Then I found it. A photo from a restaurant opening in February, a group shot, colleagues celebrating, and there in the back, barely visible, Michael's hand on her shoulder, both of them turned slightly toward each other, both smiling in a way that suggested they'd forgotten anyone else was in the room. I stared at that photograph for 20 minutes, memorizing the angle of his hand, the ease of her posture leaning back into him, the way they occupied space like people who'd learned each other's rhythms. My mother used to say, "You know the truth before you admit it. The admission is just paperwork." I closed the laptop, looked at Michael sleeping beside me, his face soft and untroubled, wondered when he'd stopped feeling guilty, wondered if he'd ever felt guilty at all. The confrontation happened on a Sunday. We were in the kitchen. I was making tea. He was reading news on his tablet, feet propped on the chair across from him. My chair, though I was standing, waiting for the kettle. I'd spent 2 weeks deciding how to do this. Imagined shouting, crying, throwing the laptop at him, demanding explanations. But when the moment came, my voice was very calm. "You filed paperwork in January," I said, "listing Stephanie Chen as your spouse." The tablet went still in his hands. Not a flinch, exactly. More like a pause mid-breath, the way animals freeze when they sense danger. "Was going to tell you," he said. Not a denial, not even surprise. Just the weary acknowledgement of someone who'd been found out and was maybe relieved to stop pretending. "When?" I asked. The kettle clicked off. I didn't pour the water, just stood there, hand on the counter, waiting. "I don't know," he said. "Soon." "You married her." "Not legally, not yet. It's just the paperwork. I needed to update the corporate structure." "You listed her as your spouse on state documents." "It's complicated." "No," I said. "It's not complicated. You're having an affair and you documented it in official records." He set the tablet down, looked at me with something that might have been regret or might have been exhaustion. Hard to tell anymore. "I didn't plan this," he said. "That's supposed to comfort me?" "No, I don't know. Elena." He stopped, started again. "We've been together 17 years. Married for 15. You know me. You know I didn't mean for this to happen." "But it did happen." "Yes." "Are you in love with her?" The pause before he answered told me everything. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe. Probably, yes." The kitchen had never felt larger. The distance between us was maybe 6 feet, but felt continental, geological, a space measured in years rather than inches. "How long?" I asked. "Does it matter?" "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "Since December, 4 months. 4 months of Thursday nights and Tuesday afternoons, and lies delivered with the same voice he used to say, 'I love you,' and we're building something together." "And the paperwork?" I asked. "Why list her as your spouse when you're still married to me?" "I needed to protect the company assets," he said. In case I divorced you. In case things got complicated." "They're already complicated, Michael. You just made them legal." He stood up, took a step toward me, then stopped when I stepped back. The first time I'd ever physically moved away from him. "What do you want me to say?" he asked. "That I'm sorry, I am. That I didn't mean to hurt you, I didn't. That I still care about you, I do. But Elena, we both know we've been going through the motions for years now. We work together, we live together, but we haven't really been together in a long time." "I've been here the entire time," I said. My voice was shaking now, control slipping. "I've been right here, filing your paperwork, managing your business, making your dinners, sleeping in your bed. If you've been going through motions, that's on you." "You're right," he said quietly. "You're absolutely right. but that doesn't make this any easier. It's not supposed to be easy, I said. You don't get to cheat on your wife, document the affair in state records, and then complain about how hard it is. Silence stretched between us. Outside, someone was mowing their lawn. The sound felt obscene, too normal for the moment. I'll move out, he said finally. Give you space. We can figure out the business logistics later. The business, I repeated. Of course. The business matters more than the marriage. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. It's what you've always meant. The business is the relationship. I'm just the person who keeps the paperwork current. He flinched at that. Good. I wanted it to hurt. Where will you go? I asked. Another pause, another truth arriving in silence. She has an apartment downtown, he said. Of course she does. He left that afternoon. 2 suitcases, his laptop, the leather portfolio I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. Promised he'd be back for the rest of his things, that we'd talk, that we'd figure it out. I watched him load his car from the upstairs window. Noticed he checked his phone before starting the engine. Noticed he smiled at whatever he saw there. The house felt exactly the same after he left. That was the strangest part. All those years together, and his absence changed nothing physical. The furniture stayed where it was. The dishes in the cabinet still bore his fingerprints. The bed still smelled like his shampoo. Only the silence was different. Larger, somehow, with no one to fill it. The weeks that followed were very quiet. I went to the office, filed reports, managed accounts, spoke to Michael only through email, professional and brief. He'd send questions about client contracts. I'd respond with information, neutral as Switzerland. Stephanie stopped coming to the office the week after he moved out. Her desk was cleared by Thursday. HR updated her status to remote contractor. The staff knew, of course. Offices are small ecosystems. Everyone knows everything. They just pretend not to notice. I cleaned out the bedroom closet on a Tuesday, packed his remaining clothes into boxes, labeled them with his name and phone number, stacked them neatly in the garage. It felt important to do this carefully, without rage, to prove I could dismantle our life together with the same precision I'd used to build it. Among his things, I found a receipt: dinner at Marcello's, the Italian place we'd always talked about trying but never had. 2 meals, a bottle of wine I'd mentioned wanting to taste. February 14th, Valentine's Day. He'd taken her to the restaurant we'd planned to visit together. I stood in the closet holding that receipt for a long time. Then I filed it in the folder with the annual report. Documentary evidence of how replacement happens. One dinner, one filing, one person at a time. My mother had died in February. I'd called Michael from the hospital at 2 a.m., needed him, needed his voice. He'd answered on the 4th ring, sounding breathless. "I'm sorry," he'd said. "I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back?" A meeting at 2 a.m. with Stephanie. Obviously with Stephanie. I'd sat alone in that hospital corridor waiting for my mother to finish dying while my husband fucked the woman he'd eventually list as his spouse in official documents. Understanding arrived in layers, like sediment. Each memory I revisited revealed something I'd chosen not to see. The timeline of betrayal existed in parallel with the timeline of love. 2 stories occupying the same space, one visible, one hidden, both equally real. By April, we were negotiating the divorce through lawyers. He wanted to buy me out of the business, a clean break, he called it. Offered fair market value for my shares, my years, my labor. I told him to keep the business. I didn't want to be bought out of my own life, wanted nothing I'd have to remember him by. "Elena," his lawyer wrote, "this is not in your best financial interest. No, but it was in my best mental interest. Some things matter more than money. I took the house instead. The equity we'd built, the space we'd shared. He could have the business, the new wife, the future he'd chosen. I'd keep the past. Seemed fair." The divorce was finalized in June, 15 years, dissolved in 20 minutes of signing documents in a lawyer's office with fluorescent lights and synthetic carpet. He didn't attend. Signed remotely. Too busy, his lawyer explained. I took my maiden name back, Elena Morrison. It felt strange at first, like wearing shoes that used to fit but had been stored too long. But stranger still was the relief, the shedding of his name like old skin revealing something underneath I'd almost forgotten was there. The truth about betrayal is that it doesn't end when the person leaves. It continues in the retelling, in the remembering, in the slow work of re-understanding everything that happened. I spent months replaying our history, not to punish myself, but to understand. When had the shift occurred? Which moment was the fulcrum, the point where our story tipped from love into performance? Maybe it was the year we stopped talking about children, or the conference where he'd stayed 2 extra days and I hadn't questioned why, or the first time he'd called me efficient instead of beautiful. Or maybe there was no single moment. Maybe love doesn't fracture. It erodes, grain by grain, until one morning you wake up and realize you've been living in a structure with no foundation, held up only by habit and fear of the alternative. Michael married Stephanie in August. I saw the announcement on LinkedIn. "Excited to start this new chapter," his post said, accompanied by a photo of them on a beach somewhere tropical, both barefoot, both beaming. The comments were full of congratulations from people who'd attended our wedding, who'd watched us build the business, who'd told us we were couple goals. No one mentioned me. In the narrative of his life, I'd been edited out, a draft that didn't make the final version. I didn't feel angry looking at that photo, just tired, and strangely curious about whether Stephanie knew she was signing up for a man who could love you completely until he didn't, who could promise forever and mean it, until forever became inconvenient. But that was her story to live now. Mine was over. Or rather, the chapter with him was over. The rest was still being written. I moved in September, new city, new job, new apartment with windows that faced east so morning light would wake me gently. Started over in the way people do after disasters. Carefully, tentatively, learning to trust my own judgment again. Made friends slowly, dated someone briefly, discovered I wasn't ready, ended it kindly. Went to therapy and learned that betrayal isn't about the affair itself, but about the theft of informed consent. The removing of someone's ability to choose their own life because you've been lying about what life is. I learned that I'd spent years making myself smaller to fit into someone else's vision. That I'd confused usefulness with love. That I'd built my identity around being essential to someone who'd filed paperwork replacing me before even asking for a divorce. And I learned this. You can survive the end of love. The heart is more resilient than you'd think. It breaks and somehow keeps beating. Keeps you walking through ordinary days, keeps you laughing at jokes, keeps you opening to the possibility that maybe love isn't what you thought it was. Maybe it's not supposed to be safe. Maybe it's not supposed to last forever. Maybe it's just supposed to teach you something about yourself. And then, when the lesson is over, you're meant to walk away. It's been 3 years now. I still file annual reports, but for my own business. A consulting firm that helps small companies navigate regulatory compliance. The kind of work I always did, but now the name on the door is mine alone. Sometimes I drive past our old office. It's been rebranded. Caldwell Chen Associates now, both names on the sign. I wonder if he remembers I helped him pick that font, that shade of blue. Wonder if Stephanie knows she's living in a house I designed. But mostly I don't wonder. Mostly I'm busy building something new. I saw Michael once, last spring. A conference in Denver. We were both speakers on different panels. Passed each other in the hall. He looked older, lines around his eyes I didn't remember, gray threading through his hair. "Elena," he said, stopping. "You look well." "Thank you," I said. "So do you." We stood there for a moment, strangers who'd once known every detail of each other's routines. He opened his mouth as if to say something, then closed it. What was there to say? The paperwork had said it all. "Take care of yourself," he offered finally. "I am," I said. "I really am." And I walked away from him for the last time. Felt nothing but a distant recognition. The way you might feel seeing a house you used to live in. Grateful for the shelter it provided, but no longer mourning the fact you've moved on. Late at night sometimes, when the world is very quiet, I think about the woman I was. The one who filed reports and cooked dinners and believed that love meant fitting seamlessly into someone else's architecture. I don't blame her. She did the best she could with what she knew. But I also don't miss her. Because here's what I learned, what I know now with the clarity that only comes from walking through fire and finding yourself still standing on the other side. Love isn't sacrifice. It isn't making yourself smaller. It isn't filing someone else's paperwork for a decade while they file you away in the same breath. Love is being seen, being chosen, being worth more than efficiency and convenience and the illusion of partnership. And sometimes love is knowing when to close the laptop, pack your life into boxes, and start again. The truth doesn't always set you free, but sometimes it gives you permission to leave. I learned to read the paperwork differently now, to understand that documents tell the truth that people won't, that annual reports and mortgage statements and credit card receipts are the most honest narrative we write, unguarded, unedited, impossible to revise. Michael taught me that. Even now, I'm grateful for the lesson, even as I regret the teacher. These days, I sleep well, wake to morning light in a room that smells like my soap, my coffee, my choices. The refrigerator hums in the kitchen. The clock on the wall keeps steady time. My name is the only one on the lease, the bank account, the business cards stacked neatly on my desk. I file my own reports now, every detail accurate, every signature mine. And when I close the laptop at the end of each day, I do it with the quiet satisfaction of someone who's learned what it means to be essential to herself first. Some nights, I think about that moment in the kitchen, the cursor blinking on the screen, the name that wasn't mine, the sound of water running upstairs. I think about how love ended in paperwork, in bureaucratic documentation of replacement. But I also think about how it began again, not with someone else, not yet, maybe not ever, with me. Learning to list myself as essential, learning to file the reports of my own life with careful attention, with the understanding that I am both the author and the subject of my own story. This is how you survive betrayal, not by forgiving the person who broke you, but by becoming the person who files her own paperwork, who writes her own name in every blank, who understands that the most important legal document you'll ever sign is the one where you claim yourself back. I don't know where Michael is tonight. Don't know if his second marriage is happier than his first, if he files his own reports now, if he ever thinks about the woman who built his business while he built a life with someone else. It doesn't matter. His story is his story. Mine is just beginning. The phone rang last week. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Elena, it's Michael. I sat down slowly, muscle memory of bracing for impact. I wanted to apologize, he said. Really apologize for how I handled things, for the paperwork, for all of it. Okay, I said. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? I don't know, that you forgive me, that you understand. I understand, I told him. But forgiveness isn't something I owe you. It's not part of the filing fee. He was quiet for a long moment. You've changed. Yes, I said. I have. Are you happy? The question surprised me, made me think. Was I happy? Not in the way I'd been happy before, the comfortable happiness of routine and partnership and shared purpose. But something different, something earned. I'm content, I said finally. I'm building something that's mine. I'm learning to sleep without checking if someone else is breathing beside me. I'm okay with being alone. I'm glad, he said, and I think he meant it. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I know, I said, and I did. Understanding someone's regret doesn't mean you have to absolve them of the damage. It just means you see them clearly, not as a villain, but as a human being who made choices that hurt you and has to live with that. We said goodbye. I deleted his number from my phone afterward. Not out of anger, but out of recognition that some chapters close completely. Some people exit your story and don't get to come back, even to apologize. Tonight, I'm filing my own annual report. Sitting at the kitchen table, laptop open, paperwork spread around me. The house is quiet in that good way, peaceful, not lonely. Director, Elena Morrison. Secretary, Elena Morrison. Registered agent, Elena Morrison. Spouse, none listed. I submit the filing, pay the fee, download the confirmation, and then I close the laptop and sit in the silence of my own life, no longer waiting for someone to come home, no longer organizing my existence around someone else's schedule. Just me. Here, whole. The kitchen light needs changing. I'll do it tomorrow. Tonight, I'll make tea, sit by the window, watch the street lamps flicker on one by one as evening settles over the neighborhood. Somewhere in the city, Michael is living his new life. Somewhere, he and Stephanie are filing their own paperwork, building their own routines, learning whether second chances feel different than first ones. I hope they're happy. I genuinely do. Not because I've forgiven him. Forgiveness is still too big a word, too generous for what happened. But because I've learned that other people's happiness doesn't require my misery, that his future doesn't negate my past, that love can end badly and life can begin again. This is the truth I needed 17 years to learn. You are not the paperwork someone else files. You are not the name on someone else's documents. You are not defined by who chooses to leave or who chooses to stay. You are the choice you make about yourself, the name you write in your own hand, the reports you file honestly, carefully, listing yourself as essential because you finally understand you always were. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for someone else to make them official. I spent a decade filing reports for a man who documented his betrayal before ending his vows, and then I learned to list myself as the only name that matters. Peace came quietly, not dressed as forgiveness, not disguised as moving on, just as this, the sound of a laptop closing, the light from a street lamp, a woman alone in her kitchen, content with the paperwork of her own heart.